The transport ship Harmony's Dream moved through the dark space between stars like a metal whale swimming through an ocean of light. Inside its passenger deck, beings from across the galaxy sat in neat rows of chairs, each lost in their own thoughts about the journey ahead. The air hummed with the quiet sounds of different languages and the soft vibration of the ship's engines. In the middle section of the passenger area, one seat remained surrounded by empty space. The being who sat there had blue-gray skin that seemed to shimmer under the ship's lights. Her name was Vera, and she belonged to a species called the Kithani. She sat very still, her hands folded in her lap, trying to make herself as small as possible. Around her, other passengers had chosen seats as far away as they could manage. When new travelers entered the passenger area and looked for places to sit, their eyes would find the empty seats near Vera. Then they would pause, whisper to their companions, and hurry to find seats elsewhere. The Altarians, tall beings with golden skin and proud faces, sat in the front rows. They spoke in low, musical voices about trade agreements and political matters. Behind them, the Zentari had arranged themselves in perfect order. These gray-skinned people valued logic above all else, and they had calculated the exact distance needed to sit safely away from the Kithani woman. Near the back, a group of Drakmori warriors sat with their scaled arms crossed. These reptilian beings feared nothing in battle, but even they avoided looking in Vera's direction. Their leader, a scarred veteran named Korax, had deliberately chosen seats 3 rows behind her, claiming the view was better from there. The reason for this behavior was simple and cruel. Throughout the galaxy, the Kithani were known as the Death-Touched. Their bodies produced a special energy field that could sense when living things were close to dying. This ability had made them valuable as healers in ancient times, but fear had grown stronger than gratitude over the centuries. Most species now believed that being near a Kithani would bring bad luck or even death itself. Vera understood why others avoided her. She had lived with this loneliness her entire life, but understanding did not make it hurt less. She pressed her lips together and stared out the window at the stars. Trying not to think about the whispers, she could hear behind her, "I heard they can kill with just a touch," said a young Altarian to her friend. "My grandmother always said their kind brought plague wherever they went," replied another voice. "The smart thing is to stay away," added a Zentari passenger. "Why take unnecessary risks?" Vera's shoulders tensed, but she did not turn around. She had heard such words countless times before. Instead, she focused on her mission. Her homeworld was dying from a terrible sickness that their doctors could not cure. She was traveling to Kepler Station, the galaxy's largest medical center, hoping to find help. It was a desperate journey, but it was the only hope her people had left. The ship's speaker crackled to life. "Attention, passengers. We will be making a brief stop at Titan Colony to pick up additional travelers. Please remain seated during docking procedures." Vera sighed quietly. More passengers meant more stares, more whispers, more empty seats around her. She had grown used to being alone, but some days it felt heavier than others. Today was one of those days. The ship shuddered slightly as it connected with the docking bay at Titan Colony. Through the windows, Vera could see the industrial mining station hanging in space like a metal spider. Lights blinked along its arms where ships came and went carrying precious metals from the nearby asteroid fields. New passengers began to enter the passenger area. First came a family of Zentari, parents with 2 small children. The children pointed at Vera with curious eyes until their parents quickly guided them to seats far away. Next came several Altarian business travelers, followed by a group of Drakmori miners still wearing their work clothes. Finally, a human appeared in the doorway. He was average height with brown hair and tired eyes. His clothes were simple work clothing, and he carried a small bag and a thick book. He paused at the entrance, looking around at the available seats. The human's name was Marcus Webb, though Vera did not know this yet. He worked as an engineer at the mining colony and was returning to his home near Kepler Station after 3 months of fixing equipment in the asteroid fields. He was tired, his back ached from the cramped transport shuttle, and he just wanted to find a seat where he could read his book in peace. Marcus's eyes swept over the passenger area. The front rows were full of Altarians who looked important and spoke loudly about business. The Zentari sections were organized but unwelcoming to outsiders. The Drakmori area seemed rowdy, with the miners sharing stories and passing around bottles of some kind of drink. Then Marcus noticed the middle section. There were plenty of empty seats there, and it looked quiet. He saw one passenger sitting alone, a blue-gray skinned being he did not recognize. She seemed peaceful and was not making any noise. Perfect. Marcus walked down the aisle, his footsteps echoing softly on the metal floor. As he got closer to the middle section, he noticed something strange. Other passengers turned to look at him with surprised expressions. Some even seemed worried. An Altarian businessman reached out and touched Marcus's arm as he passed. "Friend," he said in accented standard, "perhaps you would prefer a seat in our section. We have room." Marcus looked at the crowded front area and shook his head politely. "Thank you, but I'm fine." A Zentari passenger leaned forward. "Human, you may not understand local customs. That area is not suitable for passengers." Marcus paused and looked around. He saw the empty seats, the lone passenger sitting quietly by the window, and the ring of worried faces watching him. Slowly, he began to understand that something was going on that he did not know about. But Marcus had grown up in a small farming community, where people helped each other without asking too many questions. His parents had taught him that fear usually came from not knowing someone, rather than from any real danger. He had worked alongside many different species in the mines and had learned that most beings were decent once you got to know them. "I appreciate the concern," Marcus said to the worried passengers, "but these seats look fine to me." He continued walking until he reached the row where Vera sat. She looked up as his shadow fell across her, her large eyes wide with surprise. Marcus could see that she was female and appeared to be around his own age. She did not look dangerous or frightening. She looked sad and lonely. "Excuse me," Marcus said politely. "Is anyone sitting here?" Vera stared at him for a long moment. No one had asked to sit near her in more years than she could remember. She wondered if this human was making some kind of mistake. "You may not understand," she said softly, her voice carrying a strange accent. "I am Kithani. My people are not welcome companions for travel." Marcus considered this. He had heard the name Kithani before but could not remember why it was supposed to be important. "Are you going to hurt me?" he asked simply. "No," Vera replied immediately. "I would never hurt anyone." "Are you going to be loud or rude or make trouble?" "No, of course not." Marcus nodded and set his bag in the overhead compartment. "Then I don't see any problem." He sat down in the seat next to Vera, pulled out his book and began to read as if nothing unusual had happened. Around them, the other passengers watched in amazement and horror. Whispers spread through the ship like wildfire. "Is that human insane? Someone should warn him. This will not end well." Vera sat frozen in her seat, hardly daring to breathe. She kept waiting for the human to realize his mistake and move away. But minutes passed and Marcus continued reading peacefully beside her. Occasionally he would turn a page or adjust his position to get more comfortable. Finally, Vera could not contain her curiosity any longer. "What are you reading?" she asked quietly. Marcus looked up and smiled. It was the first genuine smile anyone had given her in longer than she could remember. "It's about stellar engineering," he said. "Pretty dry stuff, but I find it interesting. I work with fusion reactors, so I like to understand how they connect to the bigger picture." "You work with fusion reactors?" Vera asked. "That must be dangerous work." "Not really," Marcus replied. "Everything has safety protocols, and danger is usually just a matter of not understanding something well enough. Once you know how things work, they become much safer." Vera thought about this. She wondered if the same principle might apply to people as well as machines. The ship's engines hummed to life, and they began moving away from Titan Colony. Marcus returned to his book, but after a few minutes he noticed that Vera seemed anxious. She kept looking around at the other passengers and shifting uncomfortably in her seat. "Are you all right?" he asked. Vera hesitated. She was not used to anyone caring about her feelings. "I am fine," she said automatically. Marcus studied her face. His engineering training had taught him to pay attention to small details, and he could see that she was not fine at all. "You know," he said, "in my experience, when someone says they're fine in that particular tone of voice, they usually aren't." Despite everything, Vera almost smiled. "You are very observant for someone who just met me." "Part of the job," Marcus said. "I spend my days looking for problems before they become disasters. Same skills work with people sometimes." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Marcus read his book and Vera watched the stars outside the window. Slowly she began to relax. The human beside her seemed genuinely content to share the space without making demands or asking uncomfortable questions. As time passed, other passengers continued to stare and whisper, but Marcus seemed completely unaware of their attention. He was absorbed in a chapter about reactor stability matrices when Vera spoke again. "May I ask you something?" she said. "Sure. Why did you choose to sit here, really?" Marcus closed his book and thought about the question. "Honestly, it looked quiet and you seemed like someone who wouldn't bother me while I was reading. Plus, I never liked crowds much anyway. But did you not know about my people? About what others believe about us?" "I knew the name sounded familiar," Marcus admitted, "but I couldn't remember why. And even if I had remembered, I'm not sure it would have mattered." "Why not?" Marcus turned to face her more directly. "Because I've learned that most of the things people are afraid of are things they don't understand. And most of the things they don't understand aren't actually dangerous. They're just different." Vera felt something warm in her chest, an emotion she had almost forgotten. Hope. "My name is Vera," she said. "Marcus," he replied. "Nice to meet you, Vera." As the hours passed, they began to talk more openly. Vera told Marcus about her homeworld, a beautiful planet with purple seas and silver cities. She described her people's culture, their love of art and music, their deep connection to the natural cycles of life and death. Marcus shared stories about growing up on a farm, about learning to fix machines with his father, about the satisfaction of solving complex engineering problems. He told her about the mining colony where he had been working, about the different species he had met there, and about his plans to eventually design better fusion systems. "You mentioned that your people have a connection to life and death," Marcus said during one of their conversations. "What does that mean exactly?" Vera's expression grew more serious. "We can sense when living beings are close to dying," she said quietly. "It is not something we control. The knowledge simply comes to us through our bioelectric field." "That sounds like it could be useful," Marcus said thoughtfully, "especially for medical work." "Long ago it was," Vera replied. "My ancestors were healers and doctors. But over time, people became afraid. They began to believe that we brought death rather than simply sensing it. Now most species avoid us entirely." Marcus frowned. "That's like being afraid of a smoke detector because it warns you about fires." "I have never heard that comparison before," Vera said, "but it is very accurate." "So why are you traveling to Kepler Station?" Marcus asked. Vera's expression grew sadder. "My homeworld is dying," she said. "A plague has spread through our population. Our doctors cannot find a cure and traditional medicine has failed. I am going to Kepler Station to seek help from other species' medical experts. It is probably hopeless, but I have to try." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry," he said. "That must be incredibly difficult." "Thank you," Vera said simply. "It means more than you know to have someone listen without fear." They were interrupted by an announcement from the ship's captain. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all species, we are now approaching the halfway point of our journey to Kepler Station. All systems are functioning normally and we expect to arrive on schedule." As the captain's voice faded, Marcus noticed that Vera had suddenly gone very still. Her large eyes were wide, and she was staring at nothing as if listening to something only she could hear. "Vera?" Marcus said softly. "What is it?" Vera's hand gripped the armrest of her chair. Her bioelectric field was sending her signals she had never felt before. Not the approach of death, but something else. Something wrong with the ship itself. "Marcus," she said urgently, "I think we are in danger." Marcus looked at Vera's worried face and felt his engineer instincts kick in. In the mining colony, when someone said there was danger, you listened first and asked questions later. Too many good people had died because others ignored warnings. "What kind of danger?" Marcus asked quietly, not wanting to alarm the other passengers yet. Vera closed her eyes and concentrated on the strange signals her bioelectric field was receiving. "Something is wrong with the ship's life systems," she said. "I can sense dying energy, but not from any living being. It feels like machinery failing." Marcus thought quickly. The ship's life systems included air recycling, gravity generators, and power distribution. If any of those failed completely, everyone on board would be in serious trouble. "Can you tell where the problem is coming from?" "Below us," Vera said with certainty. "Deep in the ship's center. The feeling is getting stronger." Marcus knew that the ship's main fusion reactor was located in the lower central section. If Vera's abilities could detect dying energy in machines the same way they sensed it in living beings, she might be picking up signs of reactor failure before the ship's own sensors could detect it. "We need to tell the crew," Marcus said, starting to stand up. "Wait," Vera grabbed his arm. "Who will believe us? Who will trust the word of a Cathani about danger? They will think I am trying to cause panic or that my presence has somehow brought bad luck to the ship." Marcus paused. She was right. He had seen how the other passengers reacted to her. Even if the crew was more professional, they might not take seriously a warning that came from someone they had been taught to fear. "Then I'll tell them," Marcus said. "I'll say I noticed something wrong with the engine vibrations. As an engineer, they might listen to me." But before Marcus could move, Vera's expression changed to one of pure alarm. "Marcus," she whispered urgently, "it's happening now. The dying energy is spreading very fast." At that exact moment, the ship's lights flickered. A low vibration that had been humming through the floor suddenly changed pitch. Several passengers looked around nervously as their seats began to shake more than normal. Marcus did not wait any longer. He jumped up and ran toward the front of the passenger area where a communication panel was mounted on the wall. Behind him, Vera followed, ignoring the stares and gasps from other passengers who had never seen her move from her isolated seat. Marcus pressed the emergency communication button. "Bridge, this is passenger Marcus Webb. I'm an engineer and I believe we have a serious problem with the main reactor." A moment later, the ship's first officer responded. "Passenger Webb, all our systems show normal operation. What makes you think there's a problem?" "The vibration patterns have changed," Marcus said quickly. "I think you're looking at a cascade failure in the fusion containment system. You need to check your reactor status immediately." There was a pause. Around the passenger area, people were starting to look worried as the ship's shaking became more noticeable. Some of the Altarians were standing up and demanding to know what was happening. "Stand by, Passenger Webb," came the reply from the bridge. Vera moved closer to Marcus. "The dying energy is spreading faster now," she said quietly. "I think we have only minutes before it becomes critical." Marcus pressed the communication button again. "Bridge, you need to start emergency reactor shutdown procedures right now. This can't wait for diagnostics. Passenger Webb, our sensors show only minor fluctuations in reactor output. There's no indication of any serious problem." Marcus felt frustration building. He knew that fusion reactors could fail in ways that were difficult for standard sensors to detect until it was too late. If Vera's abilities were picking up something the ship's systems were missing, they needed to act immediately. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red warning lights flashed on and off. Over the ship's speakers, the captain's voice announced, "All passengers remain calm. We are experiencing a minor technical difficulty. Emergency crews are responding." But Marcus could tell from the alarm patterns that this was not minor. These were the same alarms he had heard during reactor emergencies at the mining colony. Around them, passengers were starting to panic. The Drakmori warriors were demanding weapons to fight whatever was attacking them. The Zentari were trying to calculate their odds of survival. The Altarians were shouting that they demanded to be taken to escape pods immediately. In the chaos, Marcus made a decision. He grabbed Vera's hand and pulled her toward the crew access door that led to the ship's lower levels. "We're going down to the reactor room," he said. "Marcus, we're not crew members," Vera protested. "They won't let us near the reactor." "Maybe not," Marcus replied. "But if your abilities can help them understand what's wrong, we have to try." They reached the access door just as a crew member was coming through. The young human technician looked panicked and was carrying a diagnostic scanner that was beeping frantically. "Excuse me," Marcus called out. "I'm an engineer. Can I help?" The technician, whose name badge read Riley, looked at Marcus with desperate relief. "Thank the stars, yes. Our main engineer is stuck in the lower section and can't get to the reactor control room. The containment field is destabilizing, but we can't figure out why." "This is Vera," Marcus said quickly. "She has abilities that might help us understand the problem." Riley looked at Vera and his eyes widened with recognition and fear. "She's Cathani," he said, backing away slightly. "Yes, and that's exactly why we need her," Marcus said firmly. "Her people can sense energy patterns that our machines miss. She detected this problem before your sensors did." Riley hesitated, looking between Marcus and Vera as another alarm sounded. The ship shook harder and the lights flickered again. "Riley," came a voice over his communicator. "We need help in reactor control now. The containment field is at 40% and falling. All right, Riley said to Marcus and Vera. Come on, but if this goes wrong, it's on my head. They rushed through corridors filled with emergency lighting and the sounds of running crew members. As they got closer to the reactor section, Vera's abilities became stronger. She could sense the dying energy more clearly now. The problem is not in the main containment system, she told Marcus as they ran. It's in the secondary power coupling. Something there is causing a feedback loop that's draining energy from the containment field. Marcus translated this for Riley. Check the secondary power coupling for a feedback loop. The containment failure might be a symptom, not the cause. They reached the reactor control room to find 3 crew members staring at displays that showed red warning indicators everywhere. The chief engineer, a middle-aged Zentari named Logic Keeper Vox, looked up as they entered. Riley, who are these passengers? Vox demanded. The human is an engineer, sir, Riley said quickly. And the Kithani detected the problem before our sensors did. Vox's logical mind processed this information rapidly. Explain, he said to Vera. Vera stepped closer to the control panels, her bioelectric field reaching out to sense the ship's energy patterns. Your containment field is failing because energy is being drained through the secondary power coupling, she said. There's a resonance pattern building up that's creating a feedback loop. If you can break the resonance, the containment field will stabilize. Marcus looked at the control panels and quickly found the secondary power coupling controls. There, he said, pointing to a display that showed irregular wave patterns. See how the frequency is building? If we can interrupt that pattern, we can stop the feedback. Vox studied the data for exactly 2.3 seconds, which was a long time for a Zentari to make a decision. The analysis is correct, he announced. Riley, prepare to cycle the secondary power coupling on my command. But sir, protested another crew member, shutting down secondary power will leave us running on backup systems only. The alternative is total reactor failure, Vox replied. Execute the procedure. Riley's hands flew over the controls. Secondary power coupling offline in 3, 2, 1 now. The ship's lights dimmed as they switched to backup power. For a moment, everything was quiet except for the hum of emergency systems. Then slowly, the reactor containment field readings began to improve. Containment. Field at 50% and rising, announced. One of the crew members, 60%, 70%. Containment. Field stable at 85%, Vox reported. Crisis averted. The immediate danger was over, but the celebration was brief. Riley turned to Vera with an expression of amazement. How did you know? He asked. Our sensors didn't detect any problem with the power coupling until after you warned us. My people can sense energy patterns in ways that machines cannot, Vera replied simply. We feel the flow of life force, but apparently that includes artificial energy systems as well. Marcus smiled at her. You saved everyone on this ship, he said. Word of the incident spread through the ship faster than emergency communications. By the time they returned to the passenger area, everyone knew that the Kithani woman had detected the reactor problem and helped save their lives. The reactions were mixed and complicated. Some passengers approached Vera with gratitude and apologies for their earlier behavior. Others remained suspicious, wondering if her people had somehow caused the problem in the first place. But no one could deny that her warning had prevented disaster. The most significant change came from the ship's crew. Captain Sarah Chen, a practical woman with 40 years of space travel experience, personally thanked Vera and asked detailed questions about her abilities. For the remainder of the journey, crew members consulted with Vera about various ship systems, finding that her energy sensing abilities could detect potential problems long before traditional diagnostics. When they finally arrived at Kepler Station, news of the incident had already reached the station's communication networks. Vera found herself facing something she had never experienced before: positive attention from the galactic community. Dr. Elena Hayes, the head of xenobiology research at Kepler Medical Center, was waiting for them at the docking bay. She was a tall human woman with gray hair and intelligent eyes that missed nothing. Ms. Vera, Dr. Hayes said as they disembarked, I've heard remarkable things about your abilities. I understand you're seeking medical assistance for your people? Yes, Vera replied, still not quite believing that someone was offering help so readily. My homeworld is suffering from a plague that our doctors cannot cure. I'd like to discuss this with you in detail, Dr. Hayes said. But first I'm curious about something else. This ability you have to sense energy patterns. Has it ever been tested in medical applications? Vera looked confused. I do not understand, Dr. Hayes smiled. In my research, I found that many diseases create distinctive energy signatures in the body before they become detectable through conventional means. If your abilities work on living beings the way they apparently work on machines, you might be able to detect illnesses much earlier than our current medical technology allows. Marcus, who had been listening to this conversation, felt excitement building. That could revolutionize preventive medicine across the galaxy, he said. Exactly, Dr. Hayes agreed. But let's start with your people's immediate problem. Tell me about this plague. Over the next several hours, Vera described the symptoms and progression of the disease that was killing her people. Dr. Hayes asked detailed questions and took extensive notes. Then she arranged for Vera to meet with a team of specialists from different species, each bringing their own medical expertise to the problem. The breakthrough came when Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a human specialist in bioelectric field manipulation, examined samples that Vera had brought from her homeworld. Working with Vera's unique abilities, they discovered that the plague was actually a disruption in the natural bioelectric fields that the Kithani needed to survive. It's like a virus that attacks energy patterns instead of biological cells, Dr. Tanaka explained. No wonder conventional medicine couldn't treat it. You need an energy-based cure, not a chemical one. Working together, the medical team developed a treatment that used controlled bioelectric fields to restore the natural energy balance in infected Kithani. Even more importantly, they found that Vera's abilities could detect the plague in its earliest stages, when it was most treatable. But the real transformation came when word of these discoveries spread throughout Kepler Station and beyond. Representatives from dozens of species arrived to learn more about Kithani abilities and how they could be applied to medical science. The Altarian Trade Council, the same organization whose members had avoided Vera on the transport ship, formally requested that Kithani healers be stationed on all their major trade routes. The Zentari Science Collective began developing new medical technology specifically designed to work with Kithani energy sensing abilities. Even the proud Drakmori warriors, who had traditionally relied only on their own strength, requested Kithani healers for their military medical corps. Marcus watched these developments with amazement and pride. In just a few days, Vera had gone from being an isolated, feared individual to being the representative of one of the most sought-after medical specialists in the galaxy. How does it feel to suddenly be so popular? Marcus asked Vera as they sat in the observation lounge of Kepler Station, watching ships arrive and depart through the massive windows. Strange, Vera admitted. Wonderful but strange. For my entire life, people have feared what I am. Now they want to celebrate it. I am not sure I understand how that change happened so quickly. Sometimes that's how change works, Marcus said thoughtfully. People are afraid of things they don't understand, but once they see the value in something, fear can turn into appreciation very quickly. What about you? Vera asked. You could have your choice of positions now. Every government in the galaxy wants to hire the human who discovered the medical applications of Kithani abilities. Marcus laughed. I didn't discover anything. I just sat in an empty seat and listened when you told me there was a problem. Anyone could have done the same thing. But they didn't, Vera pointed out. Only you did, maybe, Marcus said. But I think the important thing is what happens next. What happened next exceeded everyone's expectations. Within 6 months, Kithani healers were working on medical stations throughout the galaxy. The plague that had threatened Vera's people became the first of many diseases that were eliminated through the combination of Kithani, energy sensing abilities, and advanced medical technology. Vera herself became the first Kithani to join the Galactic Medical Corps, eventually rising to become the director of the new Department of Energy-Based Medicine. Her people, once feared and avoided, became some of the most respected healers in known space. The transformation was not limited to medicine. Kithani energy sensing abilities proved valuable in many fields. They could detect structural weaknesses in buildings before they became dangerous, identify failing components in spacecraft before they caused accidents, and even help farmers optimize crop growth by sensing the health of soil and plants. Marcus returned to his engineering work, but he stayed in contact with Vera as their friendship deepened. He eventually designed a new type of fusion reactor that incorporated energy feedback systems based on Chthoni sensing abilities, making space travel safer for everyone. Years later, when reporters asked Marcus about his role in discovering the value of Chthoni abilities, he always gave the same answer. I just sat in an empty seat. If that changed everything, maybe the problem wasn't with her people. Maybe it was with everyone else being afraid to try. The story of Vera and Marcus became famous throughout the galaxy, told to children of many species as an example of how understanding could overcome fear, and how simple acts of kindness could change the universe in ways no one expected. But for Vera, the most important part of the story was much simpler. It was the memory of a tired human engineer who had chosen to sit beside her when no one else would, who had listened when she spoke, and who had believed in her when belief seemed impossible. In a galaxy full of different species, different cultures, and different fears, sometimes the most powerful force of all was one person willing to see past the differences to find the common ground underneath. And sometimes, that was enough to save everyone.